Welcome! This episode is sponsored by FormulaEQ.com. They are hosting their next live event in Phoenix, Arizona on March 29th and 30, 2025, and they have big news. Mark Victor Hansen, the world's best-selling author and an incredible keynote speaker, is teaching at this event in Phoenix, Arizona. They're offering 30% discount with code AZ30. This event is next level. Remove stress, anxiety, PTSD, heal emotional wounds and release stored trauma, rewire your brain, and shift limiting beliefs. And if you haven't grabbed your ticket yet, now's the time. This is more than an event. It's a full body, mind, and soul activation that will shift your nervous system, rewire your brain, and unleash your limitless potential. Secure your spot now at formulaeq.com/AZ event.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Human Experience podcast. I'm very excited about next guest. On this episode, we have amazing Luke Tobin. He's very inspiring. I've been following his work for a couple of years now, and I invited him to. He's got a very busy schedule. He is actually a founder of Tobin Capital. He runs multiple verticals through his platform. He's a venture capitalist, but also I want him to actually come and kind of delve deep into what his day-to-day work in his funding platform involves. But actually, I'm most inspired by the story that Luke has. He started his business from a few £100 and grew it into an 8-figure exit. And he's had multiple exits since then. And he's got these very inspirational newsletters, and he makes amazing videos with a lot of free, high-value content on social media. And, you know, this man is incredible. He's in the UK as well. And he just told me part of his life, part of his year, he lives in Lisbon, Portugal. So sometimes in the UK or Lisbon, Portugal. So I'm very excited to have a beautiful conversation about Luke's human experience today. So welcome, Luke.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the introduction. That was, I wish I had you to do that everywhere I went. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's honest. It's from the heart, It's like, I delve into people's human experience, and I kind of look which guests align with the kind of message that my podcast is about. And you are certainly one of those people who we've been discussing for a number of months to have, and I think the schedules didn't align a few times. We're finally here, right?
We're here.
So, Luke, tell us what inspired you to be where you are today, and then we can delve deeper into what you do today.
Yeah, I think that search for purpose is something that I continue to strive for. I think at different stages in my life, my reason for being an entrepreneur and being a student of life has changed. Early on in my career, kind of 18, 19, I had my first company and cut my teeth on that. And since then, I've run 8 businesses in total. I've had 4 successful exits, a few that floundered into nothing. But you learn a lot on those ones. But it's been interesting. I think the thing that drives me always is that kind of that want to do more and add value to myself, but also other people, more importantly. And I think business is a place where you can fix problems, and you can put your stamp on fixing problems. And I love that. I think that gives me real drive day to day.
That's incredible. And I said, look, you've started was it media agency, I believe, which was your first exit.
Yeah.
Was that the recent one, or was that the first one?
Exit, actually. First one was a hospitality business. I then had an e-commerce business. I then had a direct sales company, and then the marketing agency. So they're the ones that I exited. So I've had kind of complementary industries, but different industries for each exit. Yeah.
And I love the fact you said, what motivates you, it's to add value to people, kind of like fixing their problems and adding value. And it goes to show you still do that, but also for free,
Yeah.
because even your newsletter and all the video content that you put out there, all your posts, it's all like delving into real problems that people are facing day to day, and a lot of things people are not even aware that they should be aware. It's like kind of like we don't know what we don't know kind of thing. And
Exactly. Yeah.
since you're an expert in business and entrepreneurship, and I want you to, delve deeper into how, so many people set up businesses, right? But the way they run business, it's perhaps only just like a glorified employee. But
Mm.
now they're no longer employed by someone; they're employed by themselves. They could be great at, I don't know, like let's say great electrician, great plumber, great,
Mm.
one of these kind of jobs, but they're not necessarily good at running a business. So they
Mm.
just perhaps getting paid slightly more than what they would if they worked for someone else. So
Yes.
what's important if you want to have a successful business, what you should look for and how you should set up a business in a way where you actually are running the business, work on the business as well as in the business.
So I think there's two very interesting things you spoke about there. So firstly, that solopreneur type person that maybe becomes a contractor. I think the real difference between a business and an operator like that is the first example is selling time for money. And we all only have a limited amount of time, right? So actually you have a cap on being able to scale, whereas a business is something that should be able to multiply with or without you over time. So it's something that can become, and arguably people go, well, both are businesses. They are, but one is much more of a operator model and the other is much more of a long-term ownership model. And I think there's a big, big difference. So if you can build something from a business perspective with people and individuals that can run that business when you're not in it, and over time you can build succession planning and stuff, you have something that's innately valuable, and then later could become sellable. And that's really when you have those opportunities. When you sell a business, that's when you get your payback for all of the extra hours and hard work. As an individual selling time for money, you're always going to be capped on your earning potential, but it's always going to be very, very reliant on you. And I think there's a real limitation to that over time.
Limitation also on scaling,
On
isn't there?
scaling
Because there's
and
only one of you, right? Or maybe you employ your son, which quite frequently
yes,
happens in these type of operator businesses, whether
yes,
in construction or plumbing, electrics, which all of these are essential type of um, kind of contracting jobs.
they are.
But even these ones, they've had some great successes. Certain companies in the UK, at least the ones I know, they made a huge success from just being like, I don't know, plumbers or plasterers to growing into multi-billion pound businesses. And again, they've applied the strategy that you've just shared. So if somebody is looking at, starting a business where, usually like it goes like, oh, I'm starting a business, so I want to either float it on the stock exchange, I want to be a PLC, and 5 years from now, IPO, or I get bought out, right?
Mm.
For, I don't know, multiple 8 figures or 9 figures, whatever. What what should one do day one at the early stage of incorporation and setup, and how should one run a business?
So I think, the kind of easy answer to that, or easiest answer, because it's quite multifaceted to answer that properly, would be that you need to think about from day one structurally, like what's going to be attractive to somebody else from a buyer perspective, from an investment perspective, like how can you build something that somebody else will want to buy or will want to invest in or will want to be part of. And the way that you do that is, initial research. So have a look at competitors that have already been there and done it, right? That success leaves clues, lots of breadcrumbs. So look at what others have done that have been successful and try and emulate. You don't need to completely replicate, but you can emulate some of those learnings and some of those clues. Put your own spin on things. I think it's always good. There's not that many, there are some new ideas, but there's not that many new ideas. And you actually don't need the new ideas these days. You just need to look at something that's out there and look at a way that you can spin it to your benefit with your own stamp on it. So I think it's about research, planning, and always put yourself in the eye of the beholder. So try to take a step back and go, if I was looking to buy a business or my business in this industry, what would it need to look like to attract me? And that's a question not many people ask. They go, oh, I've got this idea and I'm just going to plow forward. But actually step back and go, what would somebody else like to see? And actually, there's no harm. I find that if you ask for help from people, generally people want to help. But a lot of people don't ask. And if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So go and ask people that have done acquisitions in your space. Reach out to 10. I guarantee at least a couple will come back. And just say, I just want to ask, like, what would make my business attractive in the long term to a buyer like you? And I guarantee you'll get a few responses. And those responses could be the thing that make all the difference to how you scale.
Yeah, brilliant. I like that. And you are totally right. Not very many people ask themselves those questions.
No.
And then also they don't ask for help. And I have a couple of personal friends who are big in tech and multiple exits, like yourself. And one of them, he is now late 30s, early 40s. He's like, from the two that I know, he's like, huge. I mean, this guy, he's been talking about being retired since he was age 35. He's kind of like retired, but still does like. And we're discussing how people like him, in the eyes of many, they feel like untouchable and unreachable. You shouldn't talk to that guy. But we were discussing how people like this, they crave for people to come to them and say, look, would you like to be my mentor for half an hour a month? Could I, because this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to scale my business, to do the things that you've done 20 times, 100 times, and you do it day to day. And, I don't have money to pay you. But anyway, these guys are worth like, millions, hundreds of millions, if not even billions. So they're not looking for payment. They have plenty of money. What they look for is for somebody. And the guy was like, absolutely. I just had somebody in my house last night. I just had somebody in my house 2 weeks ago. So he said, every week I get somebody and I invite them to my house for mentoring, half an hour, and then my wife keeps them for dinner. She said, let's have a meal together. And it's interesting how there's loads of misconceptions about, they're just humans.
100%. They're just humans. And I like the analogy, actually. I had a similar conversation to this once before, and somebody mentioned an analogy, which I think is quite good. So, if you go to a bar, you'll often find that the most attractive person in there, be it male or female, is the one that gets chatted up the least because everybody's scared. They might stare, they might look and try and catch an eye, but they're not going to go over and approach them because, my God, the fear of rejection. It's the same with these big hitters in business, right? People go, oh, I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to approach. I'm not even going to make a pass to see whether they would help me. But again, it's a law of numbers, law of averages. Like, reach out with something that's compelling in a way that makes a difference and stands out. And the chances are you'll at least get a response. It might be a no, I haven't got availability right now, but chances are you'll get something back that has some value. So, people have become a bit lazy when it comes to like outreach now as well, because there's so much automation on LinkedIn and email and all this stuff. Everyone just goes, oh, I'm just going to set that up and run, and that's my outreach strategy. That's my connection strategy. Nobody's really, and there's a few, but not many people are thinking outside the box. Like, how do I actually get in front of this person? So like, if it's a business mentor and you see that they're speaking at an event, go with 2 or 3 questions that will be interesting and will be thought-provoking to that individual. Make sure you've looked at their content before and you've actually got some value to add. And make sure you put your hand up when you get a chance to ask a question. Stand out. And at the end of it, then when you reach out, you've got a connection, you've got a reason, you've got something that's compelling for them to want to respond and help you. Find out where they hang out, find out, who their connections are, and try and just connect in a way that's not generic. If you just DM somebody on social, the chances are, I mean, I don't even manage my own DM. So, the chances are you're just not going to get through to that person. You need somebody that you need a way of connecting with them that's actually going to hit the spot, and thinking outside the box, the key. That is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And do it in a way where, because oftentimes these big hitters in business, they see kind of like a younger version um, of themselves when you come forward with these compelling questions, and they
Definitely.
see the ambition and eagerness, and and I love the fact, when you were sharing about how it could be like the most beautiful girl in the bar,
Mm.
and if you spend some time, it could be in a nightclub, right? And I remember I was like 15, 16, and I was the opposite. I was the one who was talking to all the most beautiful 10 out of 10 girls, because actually nobody was talking to them.
Yeah.
And then like I would look around, and this is how I build my confidence. I was looking around to see that no guy would go to this girl,
Yeah.
and it's like everybody's going to the mate, to, like, I
Mhm.
don't know, she's like, I don't know, 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10. And all of our mates are getting chatted up, but she's like standing there, it's like, and you can see like her confidence is dwindling now, actually,
Mm.
because I went to talk to her. She's like, yes, where do I sign?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And people were like, later on, my male friends were saying to me, but Eldin, since we remember you, these are like childhood friends, you always had the most beautiful girl, that you were on in the club, in a bar, later on when, I was going to bars. And I was like, well, this is a secret. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, I understand the theory, but I still I'm scared shitless to actually go and do that. Well,
Actually
I
do
said,
it.
try.
Mm.
Like, so you're gonna go, because she's gonna be nervous, but you're gonna be nervous as well. And then
Mm.
you can just actually be open and honest. And I've tried many times. I said, listen, I'm
Mm.
I'm sorry to bother you. I'm really nervous. I really like you, but I'm really nervous. I'm actually. Uh, I might be, making mistakes in not being able to say what I want to say to you,
Mm.
but I just felt the need to come and talk to you, right? And the girl is like, "Well, don't be
Mm.
nervous. I'm nervous too." And this is then translated into me. My wife tells me, "You talk to everyone." I said, "Yeah, but this is a skill set I
Yeah.
developed, and this is
Yeah.
what I want you to delve deeper." Like, yes, you started 18, 19, but then you didn't know so many things that you are expert in today. So
Mm.
um, delve into the skill set that is required in life and business to become, where to get to where you are today.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, you have to hone all skills, right? And, you have to hone them over time. Nobody is born with the ability to do all the things that we develop in our careers. So yeah, it's about just putting yourself out there. And most people are scared about those situations of rejection, right? And I get it.
What
We all
would they
have that.
say? What would they think? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to be judged.
Well, you know what it is? We walk into a room, and most of the time we're thinking about, oh God, is everyone looking at me? Are they judging me? Are they what I'm wearing?
I,
But actually, everybody's just thinking about themselves. They're thinking about, are they thinking about what I'm wearing? So actually, you walk into a room, nobody's looking at you actually in the way you think they are. Everyone's looking at themselves. So the thing to remember is like we're all just humans, and we're all just people going through the same shit on a different day.
yeah,
And we all have the same imposter syndrome and the same concerns. So, like, just break it down and don't go, oh, they're unattainable. Go, okay, they're just a human, and just find a way of connecting with them. It's as simple as that. It doesn't
and
matter whether it's love, relation, whatever type of
yeah.
relationship it
And
is.
you said it like walking in a room, but then now, because people do a lot of, like, making their own videos. They're not a celebrity, just an average person making videos. they want to promote their own services, their own products, so kind of like their own brand, if you will.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but it's a bit daunting to make a video and then post it. What would people think of me? And I say the same thing. I said,
Yeah.
people are too busy worrying about their own stuff to actually be worrying and judging the video, whether, oh, I don't like my voice, I don't like this, I
Yeah.
don't like that, it's not perfect. And I was like, well, it's never going to be perfect, because what is important is that you are authentic. And if you
Exactly.
can share your message about what problems you are solving in your service that you are providing, and you keep, what's his name? Eddie Abu. You've
Oh
seen
yeah.
he's gone
Yeah. Yeah.
viral all over social
Yeah.
media from
Yeah.
like, I don't know, 20,000 followers to now, I don't know, 5, 6 million.
Yeah.
And people say to him, Eddie, but you just keep making the same video about the same thing. Exactly. That's all
Yeah.
he's doing.
It works. It works.
That's all it's
Yeah.
doing. The food that you eat is crap, is full of sugar, and you should be eating healthy. Now, I don't agree with a lot of type of food that he deems as healthy. He's not a
Yeah.
nutritionist, but it makes sense, the crap in the box, in the can, and all the other crap that
Yeah.
he goes to. He's been banned in many Tesco's. Did you know
Oh,
that he
has he? I
goes with
didn't
a
know
wig?
that.
Yeah, he
Oh.
goes with a wig like an African woman. He goes
Oh,
with a
right.
wig, he puts a costume on, and he gets filmed by somebody. It's very funny. And actually, I have a friend, it's a mutual friend, and I've been trying to get my friend to get me to go into Eddie Abu's gym to make a
Oh,
podcast,
okay.
to
Okay,
do a
nice.
live interview, but
Mm-hmm.
that goes to show, like, you got to be saying the same thing.
You
So
got to.
your
You got to.
content is all about business, and it's all
Yeah.
about the value, that because that's what you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Y-
Yeah.
you know and it's fascinating how people are like, yeah, well, what should I say? you know I
Yeah.
made a guy go live in Joe and the Juice
Yeah.
in central London,
Okay.
because he was like, I said, yeah, just pick up the phone and go live. So what should I talk about? I said, you were just talking to me about all the ideas that you want to do in property. Just pick up the phone, and on your social, you are known as property guy,
Talk
property
about it. Yeah.
tycoon. Just pick
Yeah.
up the phone, and it's like, it was a bit uncomfortable. I said, well, if it seemed like you're making a video, you
Mm.
know and it's fascinating how people create these self-imposed barriers that
Yeah.
they actually don't exist.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, one day we will all be dead. And actually, and actually, really, actually, not that far away in the grand scheme of things, right? You think about the small amount of time each human's on this planet compared to the infinity of the universe. Does it really matter if you go and do a public speech and there's 100 people in there and you stumble your words and in the grand scheme of things, all those people will forget about it. Again, they're worried about themselves. Half of them are thinking about the email they haven't replied to or the text message, and they're probably only hanging on 5% of what you say anyway. They're just hoping that you say one or two things that triggers them that they can take away. So, when it comes to that video content side as well, most people only watch a few seconds of it. Let's be honest. They're looking for a hook. They're looking for something that's in it for them. So if you just put stuff out, eventually you will find your tribe and you'll find people that enjoy the way you talk. And you hit the nail on the head there. It's amazing how viral and how well some creators do. When you look at their content, you go, "Oh my God, that's cringe. I could never do that." But they've got their people that enjoy that and buy into it and follow them in droves and engage in everything. I often put videos out and I go, "Oh God, I wish I'd said it differently," or what, my hair was a bit too grey in that shot, or whatever. There's all those things that we can't. All of us think these things, but actually, just if you've got something to say and you think it adds value, like just do it, because you're not here for long. Just share what you've got to share, help other people. I think if you give, you get back in return. I really believe that is the way that the universe works. And I think, yeah, just put yourself out there.
Absolutely. Put yourself out there. And I want to delve into, because I did some research on Tobin Capital,
Yeah.
based on obviously public information on your website, how you kind of like created this business to be more disruptive, um, because it's quite difficult for a lot of businesses to raise capital, and they gotta jump through loads of hoops. And I think with your business, Tobin Capital, you've kind of made it more streamlined so people can actually get access to funding, but also get expert consultants from yourself and from your team to support them in scaling the business, raising the funding, and then exiting. So tell us more about that, please.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't come from the finance world, but having gone through the business journey and various exits, what I found was that the kind of traditional VC or family office model, I believe, is a bit broken. Often it's kind of like, here's a check for certain brands, and they often don't want to lead, they want to follow. So it makes it really hard for these early stage businesses to raise the right type of investment, but more importantly, to get the type of advice they need to avoid the mistakes that a lot of businesses make. So it's like, I thought to myself, okay, there's got to be a way of doing this a bit differently. What about that we write checks, but rather than just writing checks, we add value as well. So we join the board, we get involved with accessing our network. We do things like, most founders and most people have a few core skill sets that they're very good at. And then they try to do lots of other hats and lots of other things of stuff that they're not very good at. And they do that for a long time. And often the making or breaking of an early stage business is like how quickly the founder can delegate out those things that they're just crap at and they shouldn't be doing. And as much as they say that they can do them, they shouldn't do them. So what we try to do is add a support structure very early on to identify where they're strong, where they're weak, and then fill in those weak gaps and give them access to people that are much better than they are at facilitating those pieces of the pie. That can be things like operations, marketing, sales, whatever. But we fill in those gaps. And we've deployed into about 15 companies to date, some well-known ones, lots of smaller ones, but always with what we call smart money. So not just cash, time as well. And then we work together to elevate the business's success. And we've had 4 of those businesses make it to Series A and beyond, and a few others that are still in scale-up mode. We've got access to various studios, both in the UK, Amsterdam, and in San Diego in the US, which help to incubate businesses as well. So where we might be able to do some light touch stuff, if they need more support and more guidance, we can put them into these incubation studios where they get a lot of extra support and more hands-on support. So we've created a really nice ecosystem. And even where we're not able to invest directly ourselves, we have a 270 high net worth database of individuals that we syndicate out the opportunity to. So everyone that comes through Tobin Capital gets a chance to at least get their pitch seen by those 270 odd people, which is great.
That's brilliant. I like that. And also as an investor yourself, and also the syndicate of investors, by having as you say, smart money, by having this added value, sitting on the board and giving the advice, so they actually avoid making the mistakes, which could be very costly in those early days. That kind of, increases, well, I couldn't say guarantee, but, increases the chance of the business succeeding to close to 100%, if you will, rather than being around like 50-50 or, you maybe even less than that, right? So they, and I love the fact that you said that some founders are crap at certain things, and they can learn how to do them. I don't know, like graphic design, website building, app building, marketing, whatever it is. But they actually, it's going to take them maybe hours each day, if not days, to do a task that an expert in videography and whatever can do in 2 hours. So then you realize that it's actually not if they are experts in certain things, like, I don't know, public speaking, whatever it is, invest your time in those things that you are expert in and delegate these other things. And when you look at it, how much time you get back, because if you are, I don't know, charging £400 an hour for you providing a service, you you then actually get all that time back that you can actually go and get the paying clients to pay you that money, where the other team is doing all these other things that you learned how to do, but you're not very good at.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's critical. Yeah.
And I want to ask you, so what does the journey look like for people who are listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, because my podcast is also video on Spotify and everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, what's the process? So let's say, um, where do they need to be in business for you and your company to perhaps look at their application, and what does the process look like?
Yeah, so we look at everything from early stage through to Series A. So normally in that first 5 year cycle of a business, we would be interested in looking at. We're always looking for businesses that are disrupting an industry or challenging the status quo in some sense. So if you're running a more traditional business, we might not be the right one for you, but we probably have the right network to introduce you to. So still feel free to reach out. Typically what we say as a first step, we've got a really nice guided questionnaire in our website, so tobincapital.co.uk. That takes you through some benchmarks, gives you a bit of feedback. There's some nice research pieces that we follow up with afterwards as well. Lots of work and man hours that have gone into that to give you some value. And then we'll always follow up with some guided feedback and individual feedback. I still look at the majority of the opportunities that come through myself as well. So feel free to do that. And then I think even if it's not something for Tobin Capital, we can open up the right doors in the right places to try and facilitate those introductions for you anyway. And then if you're not at a stage yet when you're ready to fundraise, I have my luketobin.com website, which is much more around individuals. And the Success Method newsletter is tied to that. It's all about success methodology, success frameworks that will help you on your journey to scale to sale and beyond, basically.
Yeah, I'm actually I subscribe to your newsletter
Okay, nice.
probably a year now. Yes, so
Yeah.
I regularly receive your newsletter in my email box, and yeah, it's full of very pragmatic advice, if you will, to succeed, and not just in business, but a lot of life kind of success advice that one should look at and then apply. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And when you said if you are more traditional type of business, so maybe not for you, but when you said disruptive, I actually saw somewhere on your website that I don't know the exact word that it says on your website, but it's something to do like kind of um, providing value to humanity, kind of that's the kind of idea behind the type of businesses that you are most interested in, and your team.
Yeah.
So what industries are these? I mean, is it something to do with the environment, with mental health, with what industries are kind of mostly of interest?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So all of the ones you mentioned, so sustainability, ESG, are there, businesses that are focused on trying to have some sort of impact-led companies. So we're doing a lot around kind of the health industry at the moment with, looking at ways of kind of innovating legacy healthcare systems that are a bit dated and really need to be brought into the modern age. We're doing a lot around AI naturally because AI is able to kind of enhance human growth and opportunity, I think, for individuals. There's quite a bit that we're doing, around kind of sustainability in general. So from kind of energy through to cleaner water. I can't believe that still every day, 1.5 billion people don't have access to clean water. So it's these types of projects and things that we want to find companies that are innovating. I had a really interesting conversation yesterday actually with a company that's trying to tackle loneliness, for example, for people that are lonely. And they've got I can't talk too much about it, but they've got a really unique and interesting way of trying to approach this, which is fairly, volunteer led, but like on a global scale. Those types of things really fascinate me. And I think if you're trying to solve humanity's problems, we're interested. And normally, if you look at the UN's top 20 or 30 list of human goals to try and achieve in the next 100 years, typically businesses that are centered around fixing one of those things we're always very interested in.
Wow. Yeah, very exciting, because I'm kind of like, I'm feeling like I should pitch you now, but no. No, no, I can just give you an idea. So basically, what I do as a neuroscientist and kind of mind architect, focusing on really helping people with mental health, anxiety, depression, burnout. Like, I've been talking to Deloitte at the moment, because they did a white paper based on the Gen Z and generation and millennials. So Gen Z and millennials in particular, and women, close to 60%, and this is they have 460,000 employees, right?
Mm.
They realized that close to 60% are always anxious, or most of the time anxious.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they, since 21, obviously early days of like first lockdown COVID, they started this kind of initiative to support like well-being, employee
Mm.
well-being. So they've been doing so many things, since, and growing and investing and hiring in-house psychologists and all of that. But it's interesting how still today it's a biggest problem, the anxiety, depression, burnout, overwhelm,
It is.
for the
It's
best
growing.
word, the lack of well-being, if you will. And so what I've been doing is, just accidentally came to me, a tech guy, tech genius, say we can couple what you do with technology, with the VR and AR
Okay.
and some wearables, so then people can heal emotional psychological trauma in much faster way than if it's just a process of like 3 months coaching or 6 months. And we can then scale it in having multiple people in auditorium, either standing or seated, because these wearables can be incorporated within a chair, like a cinema chair, for example,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And there is a process, obviously all guided by me, music, binaural beats, AR and VR. So once they take the VR set off, they actually see, so their brain cannot comprehend now, am I still in the VR, or is this and the entire ceiling and all the walls in the auditorium are basically experiencing that technology of AR.
Okay.
And it's kind of like an inner child healing process, through various kind of modalities that are based on neuroscience. Yeah. And that's what I do anyway,
Okay.
without the technology. So now it's just like kind of like, instead of doing it in 2 day live event or 3 day, can we do it in 2 hours? Can we do it
Yeah.
in 3 hours? And apparently yes, we can. And the technology is already out there. So and yeah, I want to scale that to a $50 billion business in 5 years.
There you go. Fascinating. Well, send me more information for sure. I'll look at it.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. It's
There you go.
answering all of your kind of tick, 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 tick. Yeah. No, no,
Exactly.
and
Very good.
and what would be priceless for me is
Mm.
to have somebody like you on board as an advisor. It'd be like, wow,
Love to get involved. Yeah. Yeah.
because I know what I know, but I
Mm.
also know a lot of things that I don't know.
Of course. Of
You
course.
know
Of
what I
course.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Don't we
like,
all? Mm.
I'm not gonna, fake it till I make it. Where, I don't want to make those mistakes, because
Of
it's
course.
my money, and as well as investors' money. And I want to ask you this. You
Mm.
know the answers, but also for the audience.
Mm. Mm.
Many times people, the way they structure the company at the
Mm.
beginning, it's wrong, because I know, if especially if you're a startup and you want to create something incredible, right,
Mm.
which is attractive to potential investors, even proof of concept investors, if you
Mm.
structure it correctly, UK government can actually cover in the first 12 months 50% of investors' money. So basically, if you invest, if you're an investor and you invest £100,000 in a company which is structured and incorporated appropriately, the government of the UK will guarantee £50,000 if this company goes bankrupt within the first 12 months. Can you explain that for the audience, please?
Of course, yeah. So it's called the Enterprise Investment Scheme, and you get SEIS, which is for kind of the smaller businesses, the very much kind of pre-seed, early stage, probably first 12, 24 months of business. Then you get the EIS, which can go up to 5 years, and you get a much bigger pool. So on the SEIS, it's capped at 250K, some businesses 500 in total investment money they can raise, and then EIS is 5 million. So to give you an idea, on the SEIS side, which is what you're alluding to there, yeah, if you put 100 grand in as an investor, you can claim back in your next tax year 50K, so 50%. And then if the company goes bust inside of 3 years, you claim another 50% of that money back. So your protection is 75% of the money. So you're only actually risking 25K out of 100K for a 3-year potential investment. And after 3 years, the success rate of a startup, if they make it to 3 years and beyond, becomes infinitely higher, obviously. So at that point, the government says, well, okay, you're on your own now, good luck. You've already still had 50% back, but you don't have the protection anymore of that other 50% back. So yeah, it's fascinating. On the enterprise investment side, it's 30% cash back in the next year and then a 30% cover. So you've got a 60% cover overall, 75 on the SEIS, 60% on the EIS. But it's fascinating.
And so that's the next level, the 5 million, you got up to 60% cover on your money. Incredible.
Yeah.
And you see, I bet you a lot of people listening or watching this podcast, they were not even aware that this is actually in existence. They'll be like, no, you got to bootstrap it. You have to remortgage your house and get all your children's inheritance and plow forward. No. You don't have to keep plowing forward. It's, as you say, smart money. It's got to be invested and structured in a smart way. And actually, my wife, she's a very powerful lawyer in Liverpool Street, financial regulation. She taught me this, what I was just sharing. She's like, this is what I do every single day,
Yeah.
And, and she's like, you should look into this, next startups, because I'm always like, I've got a million ideas and I want to start up this and a start up that. And she said, well, if you do want to launch your next thing, this is how you should set it up. So then, even if some of your friends and colleagues want to invest in a proof of concept, then, they are protected to a degree. As you said, they get there's £75,000 protection within the first 3 years. They only lose 25 grand. But by that time, if the company has hit 3 years, it's already, high in revenue and profitable. And the government be like you're getting a great return already that, we don't need to cover you anymore, which is incredible. And that's a good news for a startup, for a founder, as well as for the investor.
It's a win-win for everybody. And most high net worth individuals that I know, what they'll allow 3 to 5% of their portfolio for these types of investments. And because, if you're still earning a salary, which, or even dividends, but salary even better, because you get it back on the tax return claim. Each year, a lot of investors, or a lot of high net worths will max out their EIS and SEIS earning potential or spending potential, because it just makes sense, because it's a way of, rather than giving all that money to the government, you're reclaiming some money from the government. So it's just a smart way of investing. So if you make the business attractive and you set it up in the right way and you've got a compelling story, there are plenty of people out there that be willing to give you the money.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, the high net individuals and ultra high net, they all drive these vehicles which are supported by government schemes, you know.
Mhm. Of
They
course.
they have the cash to buy them, but they all lease them. 'Cause like my friend is like, oh, I bought this Porsche. It's like, I don't know, 100 and whatever, 100 and odd thousand pounds, 140, I think, because he had a fully spec'd. And he said they cover it up to 100,000, but then also he said they cover the service, the tires, and also apparently there was another scheme they cover for you know, the value depreciation. I was like,
Mhm.
excuse me? He goes,
Mhm.
yeah, you know, I'm a petrol head. He used to drive the sports cars. And he said, you wouldn't see me dead in an electric car until I got a phone call from my accountant. And he said, you know, why are you wasting money?
Yeah.
This is a no-brainer. And he's like, okay, I'm
Mm.
getting a
We'll
Porsche.
do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I know a lot of people that did that as well. Yeah, it's interesting. You find that high net worths and ultra high net worths, there's a real move away from living in owned property as well. So a
yeah,
lot of them now, because you can get more of a return on, stocks and other investment types than property over time, they'll buy properties to rent out and have as part of a portfolio. But actually, their own properties, they often just lease or rent,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is fascinating. So yeah, they'll always, high net worths will always take advantage of debt and schemes and grants, and they'll max those things out because they know that it's if you're smart about it, you can leverage it in a way that makes you more money. It's as simple as that.
It's yeah, it's all about that. And you know what's interesting that this information is readily available for everyone. And
Yeah,
those high net and ultra high net, they've been an ordinary person just like you, having a day job, working 9 to 5, trying to, you know, living from paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay the bills and just like survive
yeah.
until they said like enough is enough. What can I do differently to actually begin to thrive in life? And then, you know, not only they started making more money, but then utilized all the available schemes and services that the UK government or government in any country that you live in is providing.
Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating. It is fascinating. There's a real um, gap, I think, in the education system with people when they're younger around actual finance literacy. Like most people just do not know how to maximize the opportunities that are out there. And I think the information is freely available, obviously, but most people just either don't want to invest the time or don't know how to or where to start. But if you are considering a business journey, I would implore anybody to take the time to really explore these things. And again, learn. Success leaves clues. Learn from people that have already done it. You don't need to invent the wheel. Just jump on the wheel and follow what other people are doing that are doing it well.
Amazing. And just for the audience, you know, so they don't think like, yeah, this guy's just perfect, you know, Luke and
Mm.
Eldin, they know all these business jargon, but like, you know, we're not there yet and we keep making mistakes. I want to delve deeper with you, Luke. So your first business, which you exited for 8 figures, how old were you when you invested a few £100 to set this business up? And what mistakes did you make in the first 12 months and then learned from those? Because then people can really resonate with that.
Yeah, so it wasn't my first business, but my last business, which I started when I was 30, was the marketing agency that you were talking about there. And I started with a few £100s. Literally, I built a landing page website and then I had my mobile phone and I started calling like a madman, lots and lots and lots of cold calling to try and get meetings, to pitch my marketing service offering. I was doing a lot of the delivery myself. I also, outside of that, had some freelancers that were supporting me. And that first year was tough because I was trying to do everything. And I touched on that earlier, like trying to wear too many hats, trying to be good at too many things when I was crap at lots of them. One thing I was good at was selling. So I was able to at least win some business, which gave me some revenue. New revenue tends to fix most problems. So that means you can start to hire people to support. So the first year was a real trial and error period for me. And initially, I think I set the business up in a way that was very typical of everyone else in the market, just selling services for time. what I realized quite quickly was to have a competitive edge and to have a compelling story and sales opportunity, I needed to do something that was a bit different. So most marketing agencies sit here, client sits here. There's kind of a no man's land in the middle, bit of mistrust, like they need each other, but they don't really like each other. I was like, well, actually, surely there's a way of building a bridge over this thing. Surely there's a way of like connecting and actually having like alignment to get from A to Z together. So I started to go in and spend time within those clients' businesses. So I would actually go and physically spend 2 to 5 days in the business, asking all the questions that a new employee would ask, going for lunch with the employees, understanding who to go to for what. And I became an extended part of their team, like a deeply integrated partner. That gave me the kind of relationship then that allowed me in the tough times, when the marketing campaigns maybe weren't going to plan, to still keep the relationship. They still trusted me. They knew me enough to know that I was working hard for them and trying to make it happen. So in a world that's quite commoditized, like marketing, that gave me an edge. And it meant that I only lost one client in the first 3 years of business. And by the time we got to the 3 year stage, we had 30 staff. So, we'd grown incrementally and been able to hold client relationships because of that methodology that we implemented. So, there was lots of trials and tribulations along the way. Don't get me wrong. That's the kind of rose-tinted version. When you bring in new sales, often you don't have the processes to look after the staff, or it's constantly the seesaw effect. So, it was tough. It was long hours. It was hard. There was burnout in it. But in the end, it did stabilize and we were able to grow. So, I'm not saying it was easy, but finding that thing that gave us an edge and set us apart was the thing that made all the difference, basically.
I love that. I love everything you said about the process, but also I think what I want to kind of expand further and unpack the building the trust and relationship with the client, not as a AI or algorithm or whatever, but that human to human connection.
Mm, mm, mm. It was
How important was that in growing the business?
that was everything. So marketing these days is commoditized. Everyone's selling the same stuff, whether it's social media, SEO, PPC. People have different blueprints and methodologies they talk about, but actually you cut through all of that and it's the same stuff. You're doing the same thing. So the only way to differentiate in a space like that is relationship and human connection driven. That's the only way. So going in and physically being in the premises and being on site with those clients. And in the end, with COVID, it was harder. But what we still did is we would set up 5 or 6 workshop type sessions virtually. And half of that time was literally just sat talking. So my kind of client success team, as we called it, the kind of account managers, project managers, they used to get incentivized not just on sales targets, but on knowing the clients' birthdays, children's names, anniversaries. Like, how deep can you go into this person's psyche and life past just they're the client, I'm the service provider? It was like, how integrated can we treat? So they were rewarded based on becoming true partners and relationship partners with those individuals. So again, I would still say out of the, I think, million agencies that there are globally, because there's a lot. There's 26,000 just in the UK. A very small, under 1%, do anything like that. So the rest of them are
So
just
you almost had no competition
almost no
because
competition. Yeah,
yeah, and you just proven that's the real human need.
it
If you
is.
understand human psychology, you are, you know, you're satisfying the human need of that person that you are talking to, whether you're talking to the people in the C-suite or any like project managers, which are still important because it's kind of like your face to, day to day running of the business with those clients.
Yeah.
It's understanding like and satisfying the human need, the human connection, talking about not just like talking about the weather, and their favorite football team. That's nice, like the intro conversation. But knowing, as you said, the birthdays, the
Mm.
anniversaries, of like the children's names and everything. But it's incredible. and that makes people feel like that they are understood as
Mm,
human beings, because
mhm,
ultimately, and again, the full circle is like the most beautiful guy or a girl in the bar. It's like, it's not very many people go talk to them, so not very many businesses do that,
mhm, mhm.
and they're not satisfying what the human crave.
No, no,
you
no.
know and you just, and let me ask you, did you figure this out by yourself, or you were looking for clues? The success leaves clues, and you've been studying and reading about it, and you said, let me try and implement, or was it just something because of your upbringing?
Um, because I had some other businesses along the way, and all of them have been quite people-centric businesses. I think if you're in a service business, you need to think about how you can serve people first, because people are always behind the business. Um, so some of it had been born out of a frustration working in other agencies, actually. So I'd worked in an agency for 3.5 years and managed, then became a leader in that business. And the focus was always on retention of client for as long as possible to retain the revenue. It was never on the client's short, mid, long-term goals. On the surface it was, but actually behind the scenes it was like, we just want to keep the revenue for as long as possible. And unfortunately, because the agency's thinking, again, it's that thinking internally rather than looking at the room and realizing that everyone's thinking about themselves. The agency was looking at its own business model. The client was looking at their own, and there was no real alignment. Just, you're paying us for some hours. We're going to deliver here. Keep paying us because we need to keep paying our guys. And the client's going, well, I'm paying you to try and fix my business, but hang on, why is it not working? Well, it's because there's no alignment. So actually, like, you need to connect those dots and pull those people together and understand like what those short, mid, and long-term goals are for the client, and then try and match the personalities in your own agency or business to deliver on that. So we would never give our team, well, over time, we to begin with, we had to, but over time, we got smart at finding individuals in our own teams that had an interest in that client's business or industry. Because then all of a sudden, it's not like work anymore. It's enjoyable for them. So, if we've got people that are absolutely in love with motorsports or whatever it is, and we have a motorsport client, just connect them together. And that's not even going to feel like work. That's just going to be fun. And they're going to want to overserve, and they're going to want to ask all the questions of that client. They're going to be geeky to understand like how everything works. So you need to find things that are passionate for people and individuals as well, and drive passion.
And almost like it becomes effortless to scale the business if you are doing it like that. and
Yeah.
and as you say, people first, profit second. Well, basically, people first, value,
Yeah.
providing value, and then, the money and the
The
profit
money
side, like
comes.
the byproduct.
It
Yeah.
is. It
But
is.
the type of value that you provide is like, as you said, like, it's only like a 1% of companies doing that. So
Yeah.
you almost like have zero competition out there.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, this is not just in that business, this is in every service providing business.
It is. It is.
So this is a lesson to everyone who is listening to this podcast, watching this podcast. It's a heavy note taking type podcast. Take pen and paper, write it down, and then ask yourself a question: how can this serve me in my life, in my business? When will I implement it? Why must I use it? So if you don't put the must, it's just like, yeah, wow, this is entertainment. None of my podcasts are just for purely entertainment. This is about moving the needle. And, if you actually take this knowledge and you apply it, it could be very, very powerful in your life. So, Luke, I know we're almost running out of time. Um, do you have any offerings that you'd like to share with our audience? We'll put everything in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'd love for anybody that's interested in the Success Method newsletter to join. It's a free newsletter sent out weekly. As we mentioned earlier, has various tips in there for kind of life and business. You can find that at luketobin.com. And outside of that, feel free to connect on social. I share lots of content there. I am working on a few products which I'll release later this year, kind of digital product courses. And if anyone's looking for mentorship, advice, support, even if it's just a quick question, feel free to reach out.
Oh, that's very generous of you, Luke. Thank you so much. And do you have any in-person workshops or, keynote presentations or any kind of business events that you are planning to either host yourself or be one of the speakers at in the UK or in Europe in the next coming 12 months, perhaps?
Yeah, so we run a festival, online festival actually. We will do an in-person version at some stage called Growth Festival, growthfestival.co.uk. That is coming up in September. And outside of that, I will have several speaking commitments as well, but I post them all on my website with kind of up and coming where I'll be. I actually did one a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, keep track on luketobin.com. And yeah, if you're going to be there, let me know and I'll make sure we take some time to chat.
And the growthfestival.co.uk, is that your company or you just one of the speakers there?
It is, it's mine. Yeah.
Oh, wow, brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant. Okay. And you said that you run this virtually, right?
I do. I do. I run that virtually. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, we'll put all of that in the show notes so people can get hold of you. And everywhere on socials, you are Luke at Luke Tobin, right? And also, I think you have on Instagram, you have for your newsletter, you have a separate page as well. We'll
There
put
is.
that in the show notes as well.
Thank you. That'd
Well,
be good.
thank you so much, Luke. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for all the insights, all the valuable information you shared with our listeners and our viewers. And I'm looking forward to more collaboration with you and having you perhaps in the future again as a returning guest, maybe in 6 months or 12 months. And yeah, I'm very excited about our audience actually watching and listening to this podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thank you.